You ever wonder why some hip-hop artists are critical of traditional forms of religion? So are we. Let's think about that very question for the next few minutes. You know, the history of conflict between traditional forms of religion and cultural production continues to push forward. One of the best contemporary examples of this is hip-hop's critique of the church. Let's begin with talking about hip-hop's critique of religious leadership hypocrisy. Now, a couple of sessions ago, I talked about my verse on the song High Life. This time, I'd like to talk about Pimp C's verse on High Life, in particular one line that he wrote at the end of the verse, which stated that most preachers are false prophets that are effing hoes and getting paid. Now, I know this is harsh terminology for some of you, but this is harsh reality for all of us. There are a lot of people around here that masquerade themselves as one thing when they really stand for something else. As with all forms of life, this actually exists within the religious culture. Pimp C and myself knew a lot of preachers that would stand in the pew and profess one form of ideology, but later in the day live another form. And we couldn't stand to sit back and watch these kind of things happen without speaking on it. So Pimp C incorporated that line in his verse, speaking particularly to a person that we knew was actually a UGK fan and would actually hear that line in that song. By the way, that person has since corrected their ways and lived a more true and fruitful life. Now let's talk a bit about hip-hop's critique of otherworldly theologies and practices that deny the world. Now, we talked earlier in one of the sessions about the Muslim faith and specifically the 5% Nation. One of the things that come into play when I think about the 5% Nation is the notion that the black man is God and that there's no need to pray into the sky to a quote imaginary God. Now, this is a notion that 5%ers hold very true to themselves and very closely. But there are people who may not necessarily be 5%ers that still carry this same thought process. Kanye West professed recently on his newest album, I Am a God. Now this is the same thought process from the 5% Nation, in where Kanye is saying, I'm not waiting around for someone to give me something or waiting to praise someone. People praise me the same way that others praise God. So in that sense, I am a God. Now obviously in Christianity, this isn't gonna fly. But Kanye has definitely been one to push the limits of what is and isn't acceptable between the relationship of hip hop and Christian culture. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about hip hop's critique of religious doctrines or creeds that don't meet the needs of those in need. Again, we go back to the 5% Nation representation in hip hop. Groups like Brand Nubian fought very hard to impress upon people the notion of taking their lives into their own hands. Now, we talked earlier about the notion that the black man is God. But it goes a little deeper than that. By implying that the black man is God, it's basically saying that the black man has superior physical and possibly intellectual nature than other human beings. They also talked about not necessarily relying on the doctrines of the Bible in order to find one's way through life. Notions of turning the other cheek simply didn't sit still with the 5% Nation. They posed that people should stand up for themselves, and when slapped, they should slap back, and stand up for their community and their people as well. Now, this notion doesn't necessarily fly within Christianity, but the 5% Nation hold these theories and ideologies to heart. You know, hip-hop culture has worked to hold religious communities accountable, and they've been vocal about the ways in which these communities fail to measure up to the standards that they preach. Now, I've given a couple of examples, but that never satisfies you guys. That's why the bonus reel is there. Feel free to take advantage of that as well as all the other things we've made available for you. See you in the bonus reel.